Welcome to the Swamps of Dominaria. I hope you're excited to go for a leisurely stroll through the swamps. But before we jump into the deck tech, this is brought to you by mtgotraders.com. If you're an aspiring graveyard enthusiast, they will have you covered. Now, let's take a look at Muldrotha. That's going to be 3 colorless mana in Sultai colors. During each of your turns, you may play up to 1 permanent card of each permanent type from your graveyard. What does that mean? If you're new to Magic, what is a permanent type? It's anything that just sticks onto the battlefield. So you're looking at artifacts, you're looking at enchantments and creatures, planeswalkers. I might be missing something, but long story short, once those are in the graveyard, once per turn, you may cast those out of your graveyard. Now, let's say that you have an enchantment creature in your graveyard. You can only cast 1 of each permanent type from your graveyard, so you can cast an enchantment creature as your enchantment for the turn and still cast a creature. So definitely want to keep that in mind if you're building your Muldrotha deck. Now, as far as this particular build of Muldrotha, I do have Damia, which is more of a Sultai Planeswalker control style deck, and so when I was building Muldrotha, I wanted to kind of build more of just a value enter the battlefield creature deck. This is what this particular deck is doing. The main reason for that is, let's say that we do run into Graveyard Hate. Let's say that we run into Scavenging Ooze. Let's say that we run into Rest in Peace. Oh my gosh, it's giving me nightmares. Anyway, let's say that we can't get our graveyard going. I wanted to still have a deck that is still functional without the graveyard, and this is exactly what we're going for. But if you're going to be building your Muldrotha deck and you want to diversify your options, whether it's Planeswalkers, Heavy Reanimator, a lot of enchantments, something like that, definitely go for it. Muldrotha just allows you to kind of build whatever you want to build, just simply because you're using your graveyard as a utility source. But yes, long story short, mainly just going to be value creatures in this particular build of Muldrotha. There's going to be some Muldrotha cards that I decided not to run in here, simply just because, like I said, I wanted that value enter the battlefield creature. Let's take a look at some of the good utility cards that we're running in here. Lion's Eye Diamond, Deed, and Seal Primordium were all stars for me in my playtesting. Lion's Eye Diamond is just silly. I mean, it is. It's really expensive, and if you have a copy, awesome. If you don't have a copy, and you're like super serious about Muldrotha, it's worth the money. I mean, if your main jam is just going to be Muldrotha, I'm not going to lie, it's basically just like a Black Lotus for you. You get it down, you add 3 mana to your mana pool, you can ramp with, like, you know, you get, let's say you make your 3 land drops, get down Lion's Eye Diamond, add that 3 mana to your mana pool, and then get down Muldrotha like on turn 3 or turn 4 or something like that. You don't care that you discarded your hand. You actually want it in the graveyard so you can recast it with Muldrotha. And so Lion's Eye Diamond is just really explosive, and it's just one of those cards that it is so good in the deck that I just wanted to highlight it. But I would like to say that it is a very expensive card, and so if you have it, run it in there for sure. If you don't and you wanted to save up for it, it's definitely worth the money on that one. I'm not sure what the current price is, but I know it is expensive in paper and Magic Online. Same thing with Deed. Deed is a wonderful card for the deck. Muldrotha does come in at 6 converted mana cost, and you're going to be able to destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with converted mana cost X or less. So you get into spots where you can pop that for 5, leave Muldrotha on the battlefield, and let's start swinging in. You know, Muldrotha is a 6/6, so it's still going to give you an alternative win condition, simply just swinging in with Muldrotha sometimes. And then also having Seal Primordium, you know, having a 2 mana artifact removal spell that you can crack at instant speed is great, especially when it goes back into the graveyard. Now, outside of these cards, we do have Mesmeric Orb and Guruk Wildspeaker. Guruk Wildspeaker is the only Planeswalker I'm running in here, since we are running value creatures, mainly just using Guruk as a way to ramp and also use that -4 ability to give all of our creatures +3/+3 and gain trample. And then with the orb, you know, whenever a permanent becomes untapped, we get to put the top card of our library into our graveyard. So with actually orb on the battlefield, let's say that we have 5 mana, we tap out for orb. At the end of our opponent's turn, we can tap our last 3 lands that we didn't use that mana, and then whenever they untap, that's going to be separate triggers for us with Mesmeric Orb. Now, if you're also running Sidisi in here, that's going to give you separate Sidisi triggers, so definitely keep that in mind too. And in fact, you should run Sidisi because Sidisi is awesome. We'll cover that here in a second, but these are going to be the good utility cards. Let's take a look at some of the non-permanent spells that we can't recur out of the graveyard. We're going to have Vault, Glimpse the Unthinkable, and Windfall. You typically, you know, you don't want to just go all permanents with Muldrotha. You want to have a little bit of, you know, ways to get your graveyard going, you know, get some cards going in there. Vault's a great way to look at the top 5 cards. You can pay that 1 life and, you know, just kind of filter your library until you get a good spread. You can even use Vault as another way. Let's say you have a lot of dredge cards in here. You can use Vault to see, you know, a certain dredge option on top of your library, and then instead of drawing one of those cards, you just dredge all that stuff into the graveyard. Glimpse the Unthinkable is going to be a great way to get your, it's kind of like a gardening kit. It's a great way to get your swamp going with Glimpse the Unthinkable. And then Windfall, each player discards their hand, draws cards equal. You can use this at any point during the game. It's not going to matter because your graveyard, like I said, is just an extension of your hand. And let's go on to the 3 3 mana tutors that are just all stars in this deck. You know, we've got actually bug colors right here, black, blue, green. Buried Alive, search your library for 3 creature cards, put them into your graveyard. Search your library for any 3 cards, and then they choose one that goes in your hand, the rest go into your graveyard. Realms Uncharted, we're going to search for 4 lands, 2 into our hand, 2 into our graveyard. Long story short, you're just using 3 mana to grab anywhere from 3 to 4 cards that you're still going to have access to. So these are absolutely auto-includes in any sort of Muldrotha deck, and they really kind of help you push a whatever sort of game plan you're going for. They really give you just a ton of value in a deck like this. Now, we are running some creatures that have some sort of instant or sorcery recursion out of the graveyard or gives us flashback, which I will cover later in the video. But depending on your build of Muldrotha, it's definitely good to have at least 1 or 2 that you can retarget your graveyard with. Now, outside of the non-permanent spells that we're running in here, we've got some good stuff too. We've got Panharmonicon and Birthing Pod. Panharmonicon is going to give us double the enter the battlefield triggers. And once we get down Birthing Pod, we're going to be able to start sacrificing through our creatures on the battlefield and working our way up through the converted mana cost of our creatures. The fun thing about Birthing Pod is when you sacrifice a creature, it's going to go to your graveyard. Muldrotha is going to allow you to recast it, and you're going to have a ton of fun from there. But these are going to be our high utility artifacts at the 4-drop slot. Now, let's take a look at the creatures. We are running about 31 creatures in here. As far as ramping, there's something you definitely want to do. You want to ramp with Muldrotha. We're running Azusa, Lost But Seeking, Ramunap, Excavator, and then actually Exploration. It's not a creature, but it counts as a 1 mana dork out of the graveyard with enchantment, so I'm going to count it as a creature. But long story short, with these 3 cards right here, I mean, you're going to lead out to some really, really explosive turns. There was one Muldrotha video that I recorded where we get down to Exploration, and I think Azusa pretty quick, and it was just good game. It's over from there. Outside of that, we're running Deathrite Shaman and Tireless Tracker. Let's say something does happen to Muldrotha. We've got a lot of land drops to make in this deck, and having Tireless Tracker in here to get those clue tokens is going to help us kind of, maybe draw into something that can help us get Muldrotha back down. Now, as far as creatures that allow us to get our graveyard going, we're running my all-star favorite, Hedron Crab. He's one of the best mill creatures in Magic, whether you're targeting yourself or your opponent. Whenever a lane enters the battlefield, target player puts the top 3 cards of their library into the graveyard. When you're running fetch lands with Muldrotha, play your fetch land, Hedron Crab trigger. In response to that trigger, grab your land. That's another trigger right there. So when you're making fetch land drops, that's going to be 6 cards in the graveyard. Oh, beautiful. We're also running Fauna Shaman. Discard a creature card, which is going to work well with Muldrotha because we can recast it. Then search your library for a creature card and put it into your hand. You can read next turn, put it back into the graveyard, or cast it. Whatever floats your boat. And we're also running Jace's Archivist. 1 blue mana activation. Discard their hand and then draw cards equal to the greatest number of cards discarded this way. Another good way for us to kind of filter through our library and at the same time start building up our graveyard. Now, as far as the Wrecking Crew of the deck, we got some good stuff in here. We have Manglehorn, destroy target artifact, make sure opponent's artifacts enter the battlefield tapped. We're going to keep us open with Acidic Slime, being able to target multiple things, and then Reclamation Sage, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Now, you get into some really good value once you start going for like Birthing Pod activations on Reclamation Sage or something like that, because you can reap casting it. We also have, I'm pretty sure we have Astronaut's Altar too as another way for us to kind of sacrifice our creatures and allow us to kind of start recasting them from there. Now, outside of the Wrecking Crew, we've got a good hit squad. Muldrotha knows a few dirty people in her line of work. We got Fleshbag Marauder. Each player sacks a creature, enters the battlefield. Same thing with Merciless Executioner. And we're also running Big Game Hunter. Comes into play, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. Whatever your removal enter the battlefield spread you want to go with, awesome. There's stuff like Shriekmaw with Evoke and stuff. So that package is completely open, but these are the ones I decided to run. We're also running Ravenous Chupacabra and Hostage Taker, which is going to allow us to kind of keep us open as far as exiling either an artifact or a creature from our opponent. Now, outside of the removal squad that we've got, we're also running some few like Exploit and Evoke style creatures. Sidisi's Faithful is absolutely wonderful in the deck. For 1 blue mana, you can just repeatedly bounce a creature back from your opponent's hand. And with the Exploit, it's going to put it back into the graveyard. So you just exploit Sidisi's Faithful to herself, to her own trigger, bounce your opponent's creature back, and you're good to go. Really good tempo play right there, especially if you're just if you're swinging in at your opponent turn after turn, and you just keep Sidisi's one of their creatures, it makes it really hard for them to get any sort of momentum going. We're also running Sidisi Undead Vizier. That's going to be a 5-mana tutor exploit, and then Muldrift or Evoke for 2 to draw 2 cards, just in case we need to get a little bit of value going. Now, like I said, we're running a lot of non-permanent spells in here. Not a lot, but some in here. You would have a little bit of redundancy in being able to recast those out of the graveyard. We've got Snapcaster and the Mancer. Return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Eternal Witness is going to keep us online mine a returning target card from our graveyard to our hand, and we're going to get a good flashback off Snapcaster Mage. Now, as far as our finisher creatures, love this spread of creatures, really fun. We have Gitrog Monster, Sidisi, and Tygam. All of these creatures give us an alternative game plan once they're on the battlefield. You really want to think of Muldrotha as simply just a graveyard enabler. So Gitrog Monster is going to allow us to start drawing a bunch of lands. Sidisi is going to enter the battlefield. We're starting to get a lot of zombies once we start putting cards into our graveyard, which is what we want to do anyway. And then with Tygam, Sidisi's hand, it kind of allows us to step into more of a control route. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, exile X cards. You know, there's going to be a lot of excess cards in the graveyard. You can use Tygam as some spot removal, and then go beat sticks with something like Muldrotha. Now, outside of these multicolored creatures, also running Titania and Deranged Hermit. Basically, you just want to end up building a really big army with Titania, getting those lands into the graveyard, end up some 5/3 elementals, Deranged Hermit. We don't have to pay that echo cost. We can simply just 5 mana each turn, be like, all right, more and more squirrels. I just really enjoy thinking about Muldrotha Swamp and just squirrels just running out like crazy, and that being one of the fables of stay away from Muldrotha Swamp because there's a lot of squirrels in there and a Deranged Hermit who lives there. But anyway, hey, that's magic, a lot of fun. But anyway, you want to build up a really good board state with a lot of creatures, and these creatures help us do that. But that's going to be the deck tech. That's it. I do have 3 gameplay videos up for you right now if you want to go check them out. And like I said, you know, if there's a card that you see in here that I didn't run, mainly I just wanted to build a really good enter the battlefield style deck. You know, there's tons of different ways that you can take Muldrotha. You can go Muldrotha lands, you can go Muldrotha utility planeswalkers. I mean, really, it's just, you know, permanent types. Have some fun. You can probably get into some Silas Wren kind of shenanigans with Glissa, returning artifacts from your graveyard to your hand. I mean, it's really just wide open as far as what you want to go for. But this particular deck was simply just enter the battlefield creature. So we may see a different build down the road because I'm actually really excited about building a Muldrotha lands deck. So this is probably something that I will be, you know, maybe releasing a different version of it sometime in the near future. But if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.